What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and paranormal lore. Welcome back, welcome back. Happy to be back. Hopefully you guys are doing excellent and taking care of yourselves. Hopefully you're doing well. Yes, we're playing a little Stone Cold's theme song for you tonight because it's the last night of Vince McMahon's reign over the WWF. So, little throwback there for all you wrestling fans as well as UFO fans. Anyway, welcome back to Lockdown Universe Podcast. We are back and happy to be back. Now, tonight, we're going to talk about some really interesting stuff in accordance with these NPCs, I guess you want to call them, and soul containers. And who we are in accordance to what aliens believe we are. So that's a lot of information. There is this theory and this report from John Lear that came out a few decades ago now probably, where the ETs that he met with, now John Lear, famous for, being a CIA pilot, stated he engaged and met with some aliens, and they stated that we are soul containers and that our bodies are the containers and our souls are the wine, and that it has to age, and the more abuse and pain and struggle that it goes through, that it ages like a fine wine. Now you might say, Lockdown Universe, that's a bunch of horse manure. However, one has to ask, could this be correct? Because there's lots of evidence that points to the truth. There's been talk of loosh energy being collected by some entity. That's been the talk for a long time. Loosh energy is negative energy, and that we have these parasitic or even reptilian entities that latch onto people, sometimes in the forms of demonic possession, and they leech off of us this loosh energy. Now, you might say, why do I have this in the background? Well, the government now has a Space Force, and they have those who are enlisted are the guardians of the Space Force. And this is one of the patches for the Space Force. Now, isn't it interesting? This is actually a patch from prior to the Space Force, but it's for the 23rd Space Operations. Now, isn't it interesting that they have this boogeyman-like fellow hovering over the Earth? The reason I thought about this was because of John Lear's statements that we are soul containers and that we are aging like a fine wine, and that once we die, we go off into the sky through, the tunnel of light or whatever. And there is this theory that we are on a prison planet and that these aliens suck us up as we exit our body and go into the light and live our lives, right? Live our lives like the cherubs amongst the heavenly hosts, right? But if this theory is correct and that we are on a prison planet and they are cultivating us, changing us, my fingers look alien just as I'm looking at them on this video. They're cultivating us like a fine wine by initiating wars, causing mass panic, causing pandemic, causing all kinds of torturous things to occur on Earth. Let's face it, as much as we want to lean towards the positive, there's a lot of negative shit that happens on Earth, and it's for a reason. Supposedly it's for us to learn and benefit from and ascend spiritually, but what if that's just the story? What if that's the story they want us to believe? What if the truth is that the more torture that our souls go through on this planet, the more that we age like a fine wine, so that our soul can be taken by the spirit, the spirits, these aliens, whatever the case is, and utilized in their own preferred fashion. Now, you might be saying, Lockdown Universe, you lost your goddamn mind. But remember, Robert Monroe talked about this very statement. He stated that he Now, you remember who Robert Monroe is? He is the founder of the Monroe Institute, the guys who trained the remote spies for the government, for the CIA, DIA, DOD, Army, everybody. And his actual training regimen used binaural beats to set these individuals into the binaural hemisync to sync both sides of the brain to be able to access long distance information from a remote location. So if that's the case, right, and if they were able to gather all this information, then Robert Monroe must be the real deal, and he was able to talk with an entity on a higher spiritual plane that told him that there is this entity out there, or a group of entities out there, latching on to our negative energy. If that's the case, maybe this 23rd Space Squadron was created with this boogeyman-like dude in the sky in mind, so that the 23rd Space Squadron is a satellite operations command. They use satellites in order to monitor the skies, coming and goings, right? So if that's the case, maybe we're protecting, the 23rd Space Squadron is protecting us from these boogeyman-like entities. And I'll go over here and I'll show you the brand new space logo. Now, I did do a podcast on the brand new Space Force logos. Unfortunately, it was before I was doing video podcasts, so I was only able to talk about them. But this is the brand new 23rd Space Squadron logo. Let's make it nice and big for you. Pretty badass, right? It's got the satellite pointing upward. It has this arrow pointing towards the sky. They always have this Star Trek, I can't remember what you call that, but it's like a little arrowhead. And they got another arrowhead at the bottom, and it's pointed up towards this glooming figure that's robed with only yellow eyes and all dark black on the inside of the robe. And the number 23, 23rd Space Squadron. Nothing mysterious about that, but there's a couple stars in the sky. Now, there's some folks that design these logos, and they have all this mythology and mysticism within them, and, symbology, but, at the end of the day, it's just a symbol and a badge. But it is pretty cool. If we look back, this is the old one, Semper Vigilantes, which is to always be watching, always watching. So they're always watching the skies with the satellites. So they're always looking out for the bad guy. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because in a lot of podcasts I've been noticing lately is the two theories. The one that we are soul containers, those of us who are cognizant, conscious, aware, and real, and that we age like a fine wine with our battles that we go through on a daily basis, and then on a long-term basis with illness, with family members, with some traumas, whatever the case is. And the more trauma that you have, the more you age like a fine wine, and the more you go and you're more desired by whatever entity gobbles us up after we're done here, or whatever the case is, and that they reincarnate us to continue this flow of energy and to continue to age us like a fine wine. Now, you don't have to believe that, right? It's just a theory. It's just an idea. I'm not saying you got to believe. I'm not saying don't believe in whatever your religious beliefs are or non-religious beliefs. I'm just saying it is a story that is told by a former CIA pilot, a former insider, and multiple other insiders now are coming out with the same kind of story. The second part of this story is the NPC, the non-player characters, or whatever they're called. Is what the NPCs are. Let me make sure I get that right. I'm probably saying it wrong. NPCs. I think that's what they are. Non-player characters. NPC meaning non-playable character. So basically, the idea behind this character, or this individual, is that it's any character in a game or in the Matrix that we're in that's not controlled by a player. Interesting, right? There, on the Gaia network, there's a brand new Cosmic Disclosure episode with Tim the Tactical Advisor, talking to Emery Smith about these NPCs and how he's actually engaged with some of these individuals, and they were controlled by aliens, almost in like an Avatar kind of situation where there's all these humans walking around the earth and they don't necessarily belong to a soul. They're just kind of like here and there. Maybe they disappear after we go to sleep and then they pop back up after we wake up. Again, this is just a theory. It's not what I believe. Okay, this is just stuff that people are talking about. Don't think it's me saying it. It's just interesting brain fodder, right? So he talked about how he engaged a group of individuals when he was on what they call them, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, except this was a CE5 event that he was part of with a group of people where they try to communicate with aliens in a meditative state. And this group of people came across him, and they saw these ships, and then these humans came up upon their group, and they started communicating to them as though they were the aliens. So the aliens didn't want to come down. He's stating that this group of individuals, human individuals who came upon his group, started speaking to him as conduits from these aliens on the ship. So they were sending down their consciousness into these NPCs and then talking to Tim the Tactical Advisor and his group during the CE5 communication event, if you will. It's very fascinating. It's an interesting story. He stated that they didn't want to come down and engage with him directly, that they wanted to communicate through these individuals because it was safer that way. Kind of makes sense. But just another part of this very bizarre story. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if it's, if I can jump on board with the NPC part of it. But part of you has to wonder, right? Part of us has to wonder how we can go from having, 200,000 humans to having like 8 fucking billion humans, and there's all those souls that were waiting this entire time to jump into a body. Seems kind of weird, right? Could it be true? Sure, it could be true. Nobody's to say that a soul has to come from Earth, right? It always has to be here. It could have came from another planet. I'm sure there's 8 billion other souls on a different planet, right? But it is kind of weird to think of that, there's that many people here too, with all these souls learning and ascending. And what's the ultimate goal? To have all 8 billion at the top, all of us ascended? Then what happens? Then where's the next level that we jump to, right? It's kind of weird. The other part of this podcast I want to talk to you about was the idea of this Loosh energy being, in us having this Loosh energy being created from us, and these wars and feeding someone. And I was thinking about this as I was eating a hard-boiled egg. And I thought to myself, gee, I'm sitting here eating something that's created by a mother, and that mother doesn't know, or maybe it knows, I have no idea, I don't think it knows, that when it gives birth to this egg and we take it, that we're consuming it, and we're just eating it to convert it into energy for us to live on this planet. And I was thinking to myself, wow, that's a really interesting concept. Now, a cow that's being led to slaughter has been reported to have tears coming out of its eyes, and maybe it's cognizant and conscious enough to know that it's going to die as it's being led into the slaughter room, into the kill room. But a mother that gives birth to the egg and it drops below her, and then they take it out and they just boom, 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 take it out. She doesn't know where it goes. She doesn't know we eat it. So it made me think that if we're doing it, and we're not the smartest monkey, we are the smartest monkeys on the planet, but we're not the smartest in the galaxy, right? Or probably even in the solar system. So other species, if they have evolved and ascended so high, who's to say they don't take souls and feed on the soul properties as they ascend? There's nothing saying that they can't do that. There's nothing saying that the reptilians can't eat the humans in a physical form. There was a story called 23 Minutes in Hell, written by a Mr. Reese. And he stated that his spirit fell through the floor as he was going to the kitchen for like some milk one day. I think it was like back in like 94 or 99 or something like that. This whole book about it. And he falls through the floor, and he finds himself basically in a hellish-like dimension. And these reptilian-like creatures put him in a prison cell, and they chain him up, and they're ripping his flesh off. And then the flesh regenerates, and they're ripping it off again, and they're relishing in the fact that they're ripping it off. And he's like, how the hell is this happening? Oh, I'm not in my physical body. I'm in some spiritual body. And they continued to rip his flesh off. And then I think how it ended was he asked for help from Jesus or something like that, and he got out of the cell. But it's interesting to think about that, you know, when we think about reptilians and we think about these other species, that they could feed on us. And it's been told that they feed on our fear. Maybe they feed on our fear in a spiritual dimension. You know, there's all kinds of people who feed on fighting. I was just watching a John Mellencamp interview where he said his main goal for a time in his life was to get as drunk as possible and go out and start a fight with the biggest guy he could find. And he would get his ass kicked like 380 times out of 400, he said. That was his goal. There's people out there like that. I love John Mellencamp's music. That was like the first I'd ever heard of it, just the other day, like 2 days ago. I love John Mellencamp. If I would have heard of that story like 20 years ago, I'd be like, man, this guy's crazy. I still think that might be a bit crazy. But you have to think that not everybody thinks like you. Not everybody thinks like me. There's people out there that desire pain. They desire a fight. They feed off of that fight. I remember a time period in my own life where I fought with a significant other. And there's a tremendous amount of energy that comes out of a fight. And your adrenaline is pumping and your energy is going. And I'm not talking about a fist fight. I'm just talking about an emotional fight. And that is a tremendous feeling of being pumped and pissed and just so upset and maybe leave the house and maybe just like, I'm going to go lift weights and whatever the case is. If you've ever been in an emotional fight, you know, and you get the blood pumping, you're yelling and whatever, and you have somebody who's just as feisty as you, and you realize that there's a tremendous amount of energy that comes out of these negative consequences. A lot of people believe that the powers that be create reasons to have these wars. And these wars that we have cause a tremendous amount of souls to leave the physical plane on Earth, and then when they leave, they're fed upon by these entities that be. All this negative energy. Oh my God, you got shot, you got killed. What about my loved ones? And then the loved ones are all crying and missing their father or their mother or their sister or their brother. And then, the beings can feed on all of these different people's energies, the negative energies, right? So wars are extremely profitable for these entities, and then that's profitable for a lot of corporations to provide the guns and the weapons for these battles and all the different tanks and everything, personnel carriers and aircraft and all that. And it just all comes full circle, doesn't it? It's like a world of destruction, and then out of this destruction it creates this explosion of negative energy that goes up and can be fed upon if it is true. Now, that's all negative energy. We can also create a loving energy while we're here. And at the end of our lives, if you believe in the near-death experience, most people are asked, either by themselves, by their higher self, or by their spiritual guide, or whatever the case you want to call it, they're asked, what good did you do on the earth? What did you learn? And it's typically focusing on the good. They do focus. They can focus, or they can see the bad parts as well. But the main focus is, how much did you love? How much did you give? How much did you learn? How much did you ascend? So it may be that we are in this yin yang kind of scenario where evil has to exist, negative energy has to exist for us to also provide our love to those who are going through these negative times and these negative thought processes and these negative emotions. Maybe it is true that you have to have the dark to also have the light. So I believe it was told to Robert Monroe, who met with that entity, that there has to be this entity. This entity isn't necessarily negative or positive, it just exists. Could that also be true for humans with the egg scenario? We're not negative or positive, we just exist and we eat the egg. Do we have to eat the egg? No, but we'd have to eat something else. And animals are the same way. Animals eat other animals. It's not like all animals are vegetarian. So there's all this conflict that happens. And through that conflict, a lot of negative energy is released. But we can also learn through that negative energy how to become more positive and how to bring that to our brothers and sisters and learn through the negativity. So what happens when we die? Is there some big bad entity up there that the government's keeping a satellite dish on, trying to figure out what he's doing, and are they going to suck us up at the end? Are we aging like a fine wine that's going to be drank by some negative entity? Boy, that'd be something, wouldn't it? All of a sudden you kick it, and you're hanging out with everybody in your death class. You're like, oh, hey, what's going on, man? Oh, you died too? Okay, cool. Oh, wait, why are we in this big wine glass? Oh, shit, we're going down something's gullet coming out on the other side. And wouldn't it be interesting when you come out on the other side, it's another lifetime that you recycled through an entity. When you went through the entity's other side, shall we say, posterior, it's the next life coming out of the mother. Oh, man. It's food for thought. See, this thing up here is not just a hat rack. Got a lot of ideas up there. So anyway, I may be off my rocker. I don't care. But I see a lot of things and I put them together and I think they're interesting. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We could go on and on and on. Some people actually are asking for longer podcasts, so I'm trying to make them a little bit longer. We could continue to go on and on and on, but I'm going to leave it at that. I think that's a lot for a weeknight. I may need a drink now at this point, but I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. I hope it's a lot for you to chew on. It's a lot to think about. I'm going to go ponder whether or not I'm coming out a higher entity's bunghole, and I hope you do too. And I hope you take care of your loved ones. Keep a positive white light around you. Take care of your spiritual health, your physical health, your emotional health. I'm going to go out for a walk and hopefully maybe a little bit of a jog. And I hope you take care of your hobbies, your goals, your dreams. Follow up on those. And as always, continue to question the universe around you. Until next time, guys, take care of yourselves. Go like, follow, and subscribe, and lock down universe out. Like, follow, subscribe. Later.